When I saw the little blue dot stop moving, my heart did too. It wasn't supposed to stop there, not in that part of town, not at that hour, not when my husband had said, "Don't wait up, honey. I'll be working late again." I remember staring at the screen, the faint glow of my phone lighting up the kitchen. The dishwasher hummed in the background, and outside, rain whispered against the window. I had one hand wrapped around my coffee mug, the other trembling over that blinking GPS dot, motionless now, like it had something to hide. That was the night everything I thought I knew about my marriage began to crumble. But before I get there, maybe I should start a little earlier, back when my world still made sense, back when I still believed that honesty was the same thing as love. My name's Claire. I'm 41 years old, married to Daniel for 16 years. We have one daughter, Lily, who just turned 13 and has recently discovered the art of slamming doors. We live in a quiet little neighborhood outside of Savannah, a place where the magnolia trees hang heavy with blossoms, and everyone still waves when they drive past your house. I'll be home late again. They're holding us back for some project issues. Again? I tried to keep my tone light. That's 3 nights this week. Yeah, I know, I owe you, okay? I'll make it up to you this weekend. He hung up before I could reply. But it was the sound I couldn't forget, the faint echo behind him. Laughter. A woman's laughter. The next morning, I told myself I'd imagined it. That night, though, when he said he'd be late again, I opened the Find My Phone app. We'd set it up years ago, after Lily got her first phone for safety, we said. I'd never used it to track Daniel before. It felt wrong, like crossing a line, but the fear in my gut outweighed the guilt. I watched the little blue dot move across the map, slow and steady, following the familiar path to his office. Relief washed through me, until it didn't stop there. It kept going, past downtown, past the freeway exit to his office, past the commercial district entirely. The dot slowed, and then stopped in a quiet suburban area I didn't recognize. My hands trembled as I zoomed in. A cul-de-sac. A row of small, tidy homes. The address was 22 Oak Ridge Lane. I stared at it for a long time, my breathing shallow, my heart somewhere between my ribs and my throat. I told myself there had to be an explanation, a client's house maybe, or a late meeting. But as the minutes ticked by and the blue dot didn't move, a different kind of silence filled the kitchen. That deep, knowing silence, the one that comes right before your world breaks. I didn't sleep that night. I just sat there, staring at that blue dot on my screen, frozen on Oak Ridge Lane. Every few minutes I refreshed the map as if the truth might change if I stared hard enough. But it didn't. It stayed right there. At 11:42 p.m., it finally moved, back toward our house. When Daniel came in, I was sitting at the kitchen table, pretending to finish paperwork. He looked tired, his tie loosened, hair slightly damp from the mist outside. "Hey, you're still up?" he said, setting his keys on the counter. "Couldn't sleep." He smiled faintly and leaned down to kiss me, his lips brushing my forehead. "Long day. You have no idea." His shirt smelled faintly, not like sawdust, not even sweat. It smelled like vanilla lotion. I forced a smile. "You should shower. I saved dinner." He nodded, rubbing his neck. "Tomorrow, okay? I had a late bite with the guys." The words hit my ears wrong. "With the guys?" He froze for half a second, not long enough to seem guilty, but long enough for my heart to notice. "Yeah. You know, the crew." He smiled, casual again. "Don't give me that look." I didn't respond, just watched him climb the stairs, his footsteps heavy against the wood. When I heard the shower running, I went to his jacket still hanging on the chair. Inside the pocket, a crumpled receipt. Magnolia Cafe. 2 entrees, 2 drinks. Paid at 9:38 p.m. I felt something inside me go very still. I folded the receipt and tucked it back in place, my hands trembling. He came down 15 minutes later in his old flannel pajamas. "Hey," he said softly. "Sorry I've been so MIA lately. After this project wraps up, we'll do something, just us, okay?" He meant it, I think, or at least he wanted to believe he did. That's the thing about lies. They sound sweetest when they're wrapped in half-truths. The next morning, I packed Lily's lunch while she hummed at the counter, tying her hair in a messy ponytail. Daniel had already left early, before sunrise. "Mom?" Lily said between bites of toast. "Are you and Dad okay?" My hand froze over the peanut butter jar. "What makes you say that?" She shrugged. "You're quieter lately. And Dad, he acts weird when you call him. Children sense things before adults are ready to admit them." I smiled anyway. "We're fine, honey, just busy." She didn't look convinced. After she left for school, I stared at my phone again. Oak Ridge Lane. The name echoed in my head. I typed it into Google Maps. The street wasn't far, about 20 minutes from home. Just far enough to be secret. For hours, I tried to talk myself out of it. I baked an order, folded laundry, answered emails. But the thought kept looping like static. Go see for yourself. By noon, I was in my car. The drive felt longer than it was. My fingers tapped the steering wheel to the rhythm of my pulse. Each turn felt like trespassing on something sacred, or maybe something rotten. Oak Ridge Lane turned out to be a quiet cul-de-sac, lined with identical beige houses, their driveways dotted with azaleas. The kind of place where neighbors wave but don't ask questions. I slowed near number 22. It was a small white house with blue shutters and a porch swing that moved gently in the breeze. A silver sedan was parked in the drive, and next to it my husband's truck. My breath caught. I parked a few houses down, hands gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles went white. For a few minutes, I just sat there watching. Then the door opened. Daniel stepped out, his shirt untucked, sleeves rolled to his elbows. He looked comfortable, too comfortable. And then she appeared, a woman, maybe in her early 30s, dark hair pulled into a bun, wearing an oversized sweater and slippers. She handed him something, a travel mug, maybe, and smiled. He leaned down and kissed her on the cheek. That was when my heart broke, not loudly, not violently, but quietly, like a paper tearing down the middle. I don't know how long I sat there. The world felt muffled, far away. A neighbor's dog barked somewhere down the street, and I just stared until the tears blurred everything. When Daniel finally drove off, I followed. Not because I needed to, I already knew, but because disbelief has a cruel way of demanding proof. He went straight to his office, parked, walked in, as if nothing had happened. That night, I said nothing. He came home at his usual time, hugged Lily, asked about her day. I watched him from the sink, my hands buried in dishwater, my face calm. But inside me, something cold had started to grow steady, deliberate. Because once you see the truth, you can't unsee it. And once you lose trust, silence becomes its own kind of revenge. The next few days, I became an actress. I smiled, I cooked, I laughed when Daniel made small talk about work. I played the part of the loyal wife, all while gathering the tiny pieces of his deception. Late one night, after he'd fallen asleep, I took his phone from the nightstand. His passcode was still the same, our anniversary. There it was, her name, Melissa. Dozens of texts buried under innocent labels like client meeting and work call, photos, jokes. A few lines that made my stomach twist. Missed you already. Can't stop thinking about yesterday. Same time tomorrow? The next message was a picture, Daniel's hand holding hers across a cafe table, the same cafe from the receipt. I stared at it until my tears blurred the screen. I didn't wake him. I didn't scream. I didn't even move. I just sat there in the dark, the glow of the phone lighting up my shaking hands, wondering how long he'd been lying to me, and how many times I'd said I love you to a man who'd already left me in his heart. That night, I decided something. I wasn't going to confront him right away. Not yet. I wanted to understand why. And to do that, I needed to see just how deep the betrayal went. I used to think heartbreak came all at once like a blow to the chest. But that week, I learned it's quieter than that. Gee, his laundry. I found a long brown hair tangled in his shirt collar. My hair's blonde. Lily's is too. I didn't cry this time. Instead, I smiled just slightly. Because every new clue stopped hurting and started teaching me something. The person I thought I knew didn't exist anymore. The next morning, after dropping Lily at school, I drove back to Oak Ridge Lane. The neighborhood looked different in daylight, less secret, more ordinary. I parked a few houses away again, sipping cold coffee while pretending to check my phone. At exactly 8:17 a.m., Daniel's truck pulled into number 22. Melissa came out to meet him, holding a lunchbox. She kissed him. Not shyly, not hesitantly, but like someone who believed she had the right to. That tiny gesture, that confidence hit me harder than anything. I stayed just long enough to see him go inside before I left. My hands were shaking so badly on the steering wheel that I had to pull over 2 blocks away. I sat there whispering to myself, over and over, "You're okay, you're okay, you're okay," because that's what you do when you're trying not to fall apart. Us what you do when you're trying not to fall apart. That night I needed her to stay at my sister's. She didn't question it, she loved my sister. "Where are you going?" she asked. "Just somewhere we can talk," I said. "We've been a little off lately." It wasn't a lie, just not the whole truth. Once she was asleep, I sat at the kitchen table and opened Daniel's laptop. I'd seen him use it for work, mostly spreadsheets, emails. But I knew there had to be something more. Sure enough, his browser history told a story all its own. Hotel searches, weekend getaways. One in particular stood out, the Seaside Inn reservation for 2 October 14th. That was 2 days from now. And suddenly, I knew what I had to do. On Friday morning, Daniel kissed me goodbye like he always did. His cologne was stronger, something musky and unfamiliar. "I'll be in meetings all weekend," he said. "The client's flying in from Charlotte. I might even have to stay overnight." I smiled, steady. "Don't work too hard." The moment he left, I called my sister. "Hey, can Lily stay with you this weekend?" I asked, forcing my voice light. "Daniel's got a work thing and I want to catch up on orders." "Of course," she said. "Everything okay?" "Yeah, everything's fine. The easiest lies are the ones wrapped in truth." That evening, after dropping Lily off, I followed his GPS again. The little blue dot led me out of town, past the marshlands, down to the coast, to the Seaside Inn. The parking lot was small, gravel crunching under my tires as I pulled into a dark corner near the trees. The neon sign flickered faintly in the mist. Daniel's truck was there, parked neatly near room 104. I turned off the engine and sat in the silence, my heart hammering so loudly it drowned out the sound of the waves. Part of me wanted to storm in, to catch them red-handed, to scream until the walls shook. But another part of me, the quieter, older part, told me to wait, to watch, to see the truth no matter how much it hurt. After 20 minutes, the door opened. Daniel stepped out, laughing. Melissa followed, her hand brushing his arm like they'd done it 1,000 times. She wore a floral dress, her hair loose. She looked carefree. I could hear their voices, faintly fragments carried by the wind. "You're terrible. You love it." "I do." He leaned down and kissed her, long, certain, deliberate. And just like that, 16 years of my life felt like a movie reel unraveling in reverse. I didn't confront him that night. I couldn't. Instead, I drove back home, every mile feeling heavier. When I reached the driveway, I sat there for almost an hour. The porch light was on the same one Daniel installed years ago to make it feel safe. Funny, how safety can disappear even when the light's still shining. Inside, the house smelled of cinnamon. I'd left a candle burning. The table was set for 2. Dinner untouched. I stood there, staring at the empty plates, and something inside me shifted. Not anger, not yet, just clarity. The kind of clarity that comes when the truth finally stops being your enemy. Because once you stop fighting reality, you can finally decide what to do with it. The next morning he came home early, smelling of hotel soap and lies. "Morning," he said, yawning. "You're up early, so are you." "Yeah, the client canceled. We wrapped things up faster than expected." I smiled faintly. "That's good." He poured himself coffee, scrolling through his phone. "You okay? You look tired." "I just didn't sleep much." He murmured, distracted. "You should rest." That's when I knew. He wasn't even trying to hide it anymore, and maybe that was what hurt the most, not the affair itself, but the ease of his deceit. The way he could sit there, sipping coffee, talking about the weather, while my whole world was falling apart inside me. But what he didn't know, couldn't know, was that I wasn't the same woman he'd left behind weeks ago. I wasn't going to beg, or scream, or fall apart. I was going to let him tell his lies a little longer, and then I was going to end them on my terms. It was a Sunday afternoon when everything came to a head. The day had that still, golden quiet, the kind where nothing feels wrong until it suddenly does. Lily was at my sister's again, and Daniel had spent the morning running errands. I sat on the porch, watching the breeze play with the curtains through the open door, wondering how many more lies could fit into one ordinary day. When he finally came home, he looked relaxed, humming. He carried a brown paper bag from a bakery downtown, the same one he and I used to visit years ago. "Thought I'd bring you something sweet," he said, smiling. The gesture might have melted me once. Now it just made my stomach turn. "Thanks," I said quietly, taking the bag. He reached for my waist and kissed me light, almost mechanical. "You okay? You've been quiet lately." "I'm fine." He studied me for a second, then nodded, satisfied. "Good, because I think things are finally settling down at work." I almost laughed. Work. That was what he still called her. I walked to the kitchen counter and set the pastries down. The smell of cinnamon and sugar filled the room, warm and familiar and utterly hollow. "Daniel," I said softly. He looked up. "Yeah? Where were you yesterday?" His eyes flickered just for a moment before the mask returned. "Told you. Client meeting down in Charleston." "Right." I leaned against the counter. "At the Seaside Inn?" He froze. His fingers tightened around the coffee mug he was holding. "What?" "The Seaside Inn," I repeated. "Room 104, right?" He went pale. "Claire, how do I know?" I cut in, my voice calm but trembling at the edges. "Because I followed you." The silence between us was sharp enough to cut skin. He set the mug down too hard, cracked against the counter. "You followed me?" "I did." I met his eyes. Because something in my gut told me the man I married was lying to me. His jaw clenched. "You had no right." "No right?" I laughed, a brittle, quiet sound. "No right to find out who my husband spends his nights with? No right to see the woman who's been wearing my life like a borrowed coat?" He flinched. His mouth opened, then closed again. Finally, he said, "Claire, it's not what you think." I stared at him, really looked at him. The man who once swore he'd never lie to me, who'd held my hair back when I was sick, who'd built Lily's crib with his own hands. And yet, all I could see now was a stranger. "Then tell me what it is," I said. "Because I saw her, Daniel. I saw you. I watched you kiss her." His shoulders slumped. A long, heavy exhale escaped him, the kind that sounds like surrender. "I didn't mean for it to happen," he said finally. It's complicated." "Her name's Melissa," I whispered. "You met her through work." His eyes widened. "You went through my phone." "I went through my life, Daniel," I said quietly. "I had to." Because you stopped living in it." He turned away, running a hand through his hair. "I don't know what to say. Try the truth." There was a long pause. Then, in a low, unsteady voice, he said, "She started at the firm a few months ago. We were working late. She listened when I talked. You and we were distant, Claire. You were always busy with the bakery with Lily. I felt invisible." There it was, the justification. The soft reshaping of guilt into need. "So it's my fault?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "No," he said quickly. "That's not what I meant. It's just, I didn't plan it. It happened." I nodded slowly, tears finally spilling over. "You know what the cruelest part is, Daniel? You did plan it. Every time you texted her from the bathroom, every time you lied about working late, every time you came home smelling like someone else's lotion, you chose her." He covered his face with his hands. "I'm sorry, Claire. I swear it's over." "Is it?" "Yes," he said, his voice breaking. "I ended it last week. I realized I can't lose you. I was going to tell you." "Tell me what?" I interrupted. "That you'd already betrayed me, but you were sorry about it? That makes it better?" His silence was answer enough. I turned away, wiping my face. The air felt heavy, full of everything we'd been and everything we'd destroyed. "Does she know?" I asked. "Does Melissa know you're married?" He hesitated. "Too long." "She knew," I said. "Of course she did. He didn't deny it. That was the final crack, the one that turned pain into something colder." "I want you to leave," I said softly. "Claire, I mean it. Pack a bag. Go stay with a friend, your brother. I don't care. But you don't get to stand in this house tonight." He stepped closer, desperation flickering in his eyes. "Please don't do this. Think about Lily." "I am thinking about her," I said. "She deserves a mother who isn't pretending. And a father who tells her the truth." His face twisted guilt, anger, fear, all tangled into something that made him look smaller. "I'll fix it," he said. "I'll fix everything." I shook my head. "You can't fix what you broke by pretending it never happened." He stared at me for a long moment, then turned toward the stairs. I heard drawers opening, the sound of a zipper. 10 minutes later, the front door closed behind him. The house felt too quiet after that. I stood there, surrounded by the faint scent of cinnamon and his cologne, realizing that silence isn't peaceful when it's full of ghosts. I sank into the chair at the table, the same one where I'd once waited for his truck lights to appear in the driveway. Only this time, I wasn't waiting for anything. The truth had finally arrived, and it was louder than I ever imagined. When Daniel left, I thought the hardest part would be the silence, but it wasn't. It was the explaining, because betrayal doesn't just shatter your heart, it ripples. It seeps into every corner of your life, touching people who never asked to be part of the story. The first to notice was Lily. He'd been gone 3 days when she came home from school, backpack half unzipped, hair frizzed from the bus ride. "Mom," she said cautiously, "where's Dad?" I took a deep breath. "He's staying somewhere else for a little while." "Why?" I wanted to tell her the truth. But how do you explain adult pain to a child without turning it into poison? "We just need some space," I said gently. "Sometimes grown-ups have to think things through." She frowned. "Are you fighting?" "Yes," I admitted. "But it's not your fault, sweetheart. None of this is." Her eyes filled with tears. "Did I do something?" No, I said quickly, pulling her close. "You did everything right." I held her until she stopped crying. But that night, after she'd fallen asleep, I sat alone in her doorway, staring at her sleeping face, and I promised myself she'd never have to question her worth again because of his mistakes. Daniel called the next morning. "Can we talk?" he asked. His voice sounded rough, like he hadn't slept. "About what?" "Abo?" Us, Lily. "I can't stay away forever, Claire. People are asking questions at work. My mom's been calling you. She's welcome to call me," I said evenly. "But you can talk to Lily." "That's it." He sighed. "You can't just shut me out." "I'm not shutting you out, Daniel. I'm setting boundaries." "There's a difference." He paused. Then softly I made a mistake. One mistake. I almost laughed. "One mistake? You built an entire second life, Daniel. That's not a mistake, that's a choice." He didn't answer. I could hear him breathing, the faint buzz of traffic on his end. "Just tell me what you want." He finally said, "I want peace," I said. "And I want you to respect that I need time to figure out what my life looks like now." Then I hung up. The following week, news spread as it always does in small towns. I was at the grocery store when I first heard it. 2 women whispering near the produce section. "Heard he was seeing that new girl from the firm." "Really? Poor Claire. She's such a sweetheart. Men like that never change. They didn't know I was behind them." When they turned and saw me, their faces turned pale. I smiled faintly. "Good morning," I said. That was all it took to silence the rumor mill for about 6 hours. By sunset, I was getting texts from friends, some gentle, some curious. I ignored them all. People mean well, but pity has a way of feeling like salt on an open wound. Instead, I focused on the one thing I still had control over: my work. The bakery orders started piling up. Maybe it was sympathy, or maybe people just needed cupcakes for their own heartbreaks. Either way, I poured myself into it. I baked until my hands ached and the kitchen smelled of sugar and butter and resilience. Baking had always been my quiet language of love. Now, it became my therapy. Every time I whipped frosting or folded dough, I reminded myself that I was still building something, even if it wasn't a marriage anymore. 2 weeks after Daniel left, he showed up at the house unannounced. Lily was in the backyard, and I was cleaning up flour when I saw his truck pull into the driveway. He looked nervous, like a man walking into a confession booth. "Can we talk?" he asked. I hesitated, then nodded. 5 minutes. He stepped inside, glancing around like the house had changed without him. "You've been busy," he said. "Work helps." He nodded, then took a deep breath. "Melissa's leaving the company." I stayed silent. "She told HR everything," he continued. "The affair, the meetings, the owner called me in. I had to resign." I blinked slowly. "So now it's real for you." His voice cracked. Claire, I'm sorry, I lost everything. You didn't lose everything, Daniel, you gave it away. He looked at me, eyes red, hands shaking. I miss you. Do you miss me? I asked softly, or the version of me that didn't know the truth. He didn't answer. He didn't have to. I took a deep breath and steadied my voice. I'm not going to hate you, Daniel. Hate would mean I still have space for you in my heart. I don't. Not anymore. He swallowed hard. What do you want me to do? Be a father to Lily, I said. Show her what accountability looks like. That's all. He nodded slowly. I'll try. Good, I said, because trying is the least you owe her. After he left, I stood at the window, watching his truck disappear down the road. Something in me shifted again, not the old kind of grief, but something gentler. Acceptance, maybe, or the first hint of healing. Because when someone breaks your trust, you think the pain will last forever. But it doesn't. It changes shape. It becomes quieter, softer. And one day, it turns into something almost beautiful, the proof that you survived. 2 months passed. Lily adjusted faster than I expected. Kids are resilient that way. She spent weekends with Daniel, came home full of stories, sometimes even smiling. As for me, I found a strange kind of peace in solitude. I redecorated the house, painted the kitchen blue, replaced the curtains, donated Daniel's old clothes. Every change felt like reclaiming a piece of myself. One evening, while closing the bakery, my friend Martha stopped by. Claire, she said gently, I saw Daniel today. He looked rough. I smiled faintly. Life has a way of teaching lessons when we don't listen the first time. She nodded, studying me. You seem different, stronger. I thought about that for a moment. I think I finally stopped waiting for him to apologize the way I needed. Sometimes peace comes when you accept that closure might never arrive. Martha reached over and squeezed my hand. I'm proud of you. Thanks, I whispered. I'm proud of me too. That night, as I tucked Lily into bed, she looked up and said, Mom, are you and Dad ever going to be together again? I hesitated, not because I didn't know the answer, but because I wanted to say it right. No, sweetheart, I said softly, but that's okay. Some things are meant to change so we can grow. She thought for a second. Do you still love him? I smiled sadly. I'll always care about him, but love doesn't always mean staying. Sometimes it means letting go. She nodded slowly, her small hand finding mine. I'm glad you didn't give up on us. Tears welled in my eyes. Never, I said. Never on us. I didn't hear from Daniel for weeks after the divorce was finalized. The house felt strange at first, too still, too clean. No rumpled jacket on the back of the chair, no keys tossed carelessly on the counter, just me, my coffee mug, and Lily's laughter echoing down the hallway. In those early mornings, I learned something about silence. It wasn't empty, it was healing. I started filling it with life again slowly. At first it was simple things, rearranging the furniture, painting the living room a soft sage green because I'd always wanted to, but Daniel said it was too dull. Taking long walks with Lily after dinner, both of us talking about nothing and everything. We found a rhythm that was ours alone. Lily had questions, of course. Children always do. One night she asked, Mommy, why doesn't Daddy come to tuck me in anymore? I looked into those big brown eyes, so much like his, and said softly, Sometimes people get lost, sweetheart, and it takes them time to find their way back to who they really are. She nodded, as if she understood more than I gave her credit for. Maybe she did. Daniel's life, from what little I heard, didn't stay steady for long. Sophie moved to another city after their affair became public. The whispers had followed them first at his office, then at her family's gatherings. I didn't rejoice in his pain. I'd already spent too many nights wishing for fairness, for balance, but life has a quiet way of handling what we cannot. What I wanted instead was peace, and peace, surprisingly, wanted me too. I started volunteering at a local shelter for women, some rebuilding from divorce, others from harder things. Listening to their stories reminded me that pain, when shared, loses some of its sharpness. One of the counselors there, a kind man named Ethan, often stayed late after the meetings. He had the sort of voice that made silence feel companionable, not lonely. We'd sit outside on the steps, coffee in hand, watching the city lights blink awake. He didn't ask much about my past, and I didn't offer. But once, he said something I still remember. "You can't rebuild the same house after a storm," he told me, eyes soft. "But you can plant flowers in the ruins. Sometimes they bloom stronger." There was no spark, no dramatic rush of feeling, just comfort, a steady warmth that reminded me of who I was before I started bending myself to keep someone else happy. One afternoon, months later, I saw Daniel outside Lily's school. He looked older, tired, thinner, wearing a jacket I didn't recognize. We talked briefly, cordially. He apologized again, but this time, his words carried no weight. Not because they weren't sincere, but because I didn't need them anymore. "Lily's doing well," he said quietly. "You've done a good job, Claire." I smiled. We both had our lessons to learn. He nodded, a small, sad smile touching his lips. Then he walked away, disappearing into the crowd of cars and parents. That night, I stood in the kitchen, watching Lily draw at the table, her small fingers smudged with pencil dust. The hum of the refrigerator, the smell of chicken roasting, the faint sound of a children's song from the living room. It all felt ordinary, but it was mine, and it was enough. I realized something then. When love ends, it doesn't mean your story ends. Sometimes it just changes chapters. The version of me who once trembled over a blinking GPS dot was gone. In her place stood a woman who trusted her own footsteps again. And when Ethan asked one evening if I wanted to join him for dinner, not as colleagues, but as two people who'd seen storms and still believed in sunlight, I said yes. Not because I needed someone to complete me, but because I'd finally learned to stand whole on my own. Sometimes, life doesn't break us to destroy us. It breaks us to show us what was fragile all along and to teach us how to rebuild stronger. I used to think that forgiveness was something you gave to another person, but I learned it's really something you give to yourself. Because carrying bitterness is like holding your breath. You can't move forward until you let it go. If you've ever found yourself staring at a truth you didn't want to see, remember this. Pain is not proof that you failed. It's proof that you tried, that you loved, that you were brave enough to believe in something. And if someone's betrayal has ever made you doubt your worth, look at me now. There's peace on the other side of heartbreak. You just have to walk through the fire to reach it. Would you have done what I did? Tell me in the comments below, and if you're still healing, remember, you're not alone. There's always another sunrise waiting for you.